cross, line breeding, inbreeding. We're gonna break down genetics for you in a fun way. We're doing this in 3, 2, 1. Let's go. So the debate as to whether males contribute more genetically or females do. If you look at the book's going to tell you that it's 50-50, but even now, it kind of tells you something that will kind of throw things off a little bit. And this is what I mean by that. You have an X and a Y chromosomes, right? So an XY is a male chromosome, and then the female is XX, right? So I'll put here female, and I'll put here male, so you can start getting an idea where I'm coming from. So at the very top, you have XY, that's a male, and at the bottom, it's a double X, that's a female. So you may be wondering, what's the big deal? When the male breeds with the female, what is really going to be transmitting his DNA is going to be that one X, because that letter Y, that determines sex. So the Y is going to determine sex, and so that male has one X that he's bringing, which tells you that the male, from all the reading I've been doing and getting into it, brings less diversification, okay, into a breeding, because he is only able to pull from his 2 chromosomes only from this one X, whereas when it's a female, you're pulling actually from 2 sides. So keep in mind that each X, imagine each X, you could break it down into little pieces like a puzzle. So in essence, an X could look something like this. So this is what an X in essence for breeding truly looks like. And each particular segment of line is a piece of genetics that could either be from the female's mom or dad, or the male's mom or dad. And then these pieces of puzzles, if you will, are going to miss and match each other and create. You have 23 chromosomes. I take it back. 23 chromosomes is us humans. Dogs have way more than us. The fact that the Y is only there to determine sex, it cannot necessarily push in the entire diversity it has in the background, as I'm talking about as a male, versus what a female can, because the female has 2 X's to pull from as far as diversity. This is why it's important, if you're going to be doing a breeding and you want to pull particular traits that are, say, from behind the female, that female has, the females that have inbreedings behind them will definitely, just based on numbers, push through more than what a male can, because that Y is not there to push genetics. It's there to determine sex. And so the male, to that extent, is left vulnerable just on sheer numbers of combinations to the female. So that's one way of looking at it and determining that the female will actually, based on her diversity. Now, you have a female that is outcrossed, then you have all this diversity that she's going to pull from, so it will dilute her line. If she's outcrossed and behind her parents, they're also outcrossed, then you're just going to get a plethora of just bits and pieces from everywhere. Whereas if you have a female that has inbreeding behind her, she's not only going to have the chromosomes, or better yet, the genes or the blood or the traits that you're looking for, but also she's going to dominate just based on sheer numbers. It's 2 X's versus 1. So when it comes down to who's going to put what, an inbred female is a very powerful thing. Don't get me wrong, an inbred male definitely brings homozygous pairs, and those are just pairs that are identical. If that female's outcrossed, he may dominate. This is why I'm throwing that out there. But if you have a female that's inbred, that is, in my opinion, breeding gold. That's where you're able to actually dictate as to, okay, I want his head, but I want her body. And it gives you more of a basis as to where to establish your breeding. And it's based just on this, what I'm just showing you right now, is just based on sheer numbers. I haven't even touched on the mitochondrial DNA. On the mitochondrial DNA, a female's ovum has, I want to say, hundreds of thousands of mitochondria. And the one little sperm that's going to go up in there has single digits mitochondrial DNA, mitochondria on its tail, which, by the way, rarely makes it into the egg. So you got, let me write here, single digits, all right, less than 10, and you have 100,000 in the egg. Okay, so mitochondrial DNA is also dominated by the female, because the male just, even if the whole tail went in, it's what, 9 versus 100,000. 9 versus 100,000. It's just not going to win. This is why it takes millions of years for mitochondrial DNA to change. And it's because of this. It's because you got these single digits going up against hundreds of thousands of mitochondria that are already there in the egg. And so the change goes by way too slow. Let me tell you, that's just basic biology that I'm talking to you about right now with the whole X and the Y. Now let's talk about in practice. Let's talk about what I see in the yard. Now, mind you, I stud males just like a lot of you do, and I also have females like a lot of you do as well. Why is it that I would go ahead and outcross, for example, and whereas I got males in the yard, why wouldn't I just always just keep going with the males and the females? Well, first of all, if you do that over long term, is not going to work, because your blood in the yard is going to become too tight. And when the blood becomes too tight, it becomes very susceptible to things like illnesses, just genetic illnesses. Also, litter sizes are going to become smaller. Also, the dog's immune system may be compromised, so on and so forth. So it's always important, at least for me, to bring outside blood and keep the blood somewhat fresh, because that diversity is what's going to keep the blood from becoming too tight, obviously, and getting into trouble. You got some people that just want to inbreed. And what ends up happening, like I said, you lead to mutations within the genetic code. And then you start having dogs that, instead of improving your line, they're actually making it go backwards rather than forward. Again, that's just my idea, is to always keep your blood fresh. You don't want to tighten it up too much. For me, it's almost kind of like if you were fishing. You know how you throw the pole out there? You know, you swing the line, you throw the line out there, and then you bring it in, you tighten it up. But when it's too tight, what do you have to do? You have to go ahead and throw it out again, right? And so that's how I kind of equate it. So I have gone out and I have bred outside of my yard without fear. And the main reason for that is because I feel that the females that I've bred outside of my yard have strong enough blood where, you know, they're going to be able to put their stamp and are, you know, what we're looking for. So in essence, if I go outside, yes, sure, I'm looking for a trait or two, but it's going to be coming back to a female in my yard. If you notice in my yard, the way I set it up, I purposefully have a common denominator. And that common denominator, her name is Aruba. And so if you look at my males, you look at 305, you look at Congo, you look at Power, same mom. Then you also look across the aisle and you can see Mocha and you can see Athena. And guess what? Same mom. There's a reason for that. And the reason for that, a lot of people are going to be like, you know, patting me on the back and saying, yo, you know, I congratulate you for 305, and I appreciate it, man. Don't get me wrong. And 305 has definitely done his thing. But in reality, it's the females that you're looking at, man, because they're the ones, when it comes down to the X's and Y's, they're the ones that are going to dominate just on sheer number. And that's how I've always taken my program, is based on my females. It's how you know where a breeder's direction is, in my opinion. Now, a lot of times you're going to see some breeders out there that have a different train of thought, and for them it's all about the males. And you know, who am I to say that they're wrong? I just have a different way of seeing it. But based on science and biology, everything indicates that the female can actually put more on the table than a male. Again, there's also the mitochondrial DNA that's got nothing to do with nuclear DNA. It's two separate things. And the mitochondrial DNA is only passed on by the mom. I've already shown you the numbers, that 100,000 to single digits. So in essence, the female, if she is line bred, if she has been inbred, and you got the traits that you're looking for in her, specifically their dominant traits, you can definitely dictate as to what's going to be produced. It's almost the closest thing I want to think of as having a mold where, yeah, this dog's color is that and he's got this, but when you throw it through there, you're going to get a mold of her in that version. So again, that's just my train of thought. Yes, bringing in males in is going to be good, because Raul's females will clean it up, and he did it right by getting clean and correct first before bringing in the bone and head. This is correct. It is correct. We wanted to, first of all, create a common denominator in the yard, and then follow that up with having males of that common denominator and females. So when I bring something from the outside, I have the females' mitochondrial DNA and genome already set up. You're supposed to beat out what the males are bringing in, unless they are inbred or line bred. Okay, if they're more line bred than your female, or more inbred than your female, then there's a possibility that their combinations are going to dominate outside of the mitochondrial DNA. The way I have it set up is I'll have a male come into a female in my yard, but then I have now what is it, 1, 2, 3 males that are sons of Aruba, and then I have a half brother in Fireball. So you see where I'm getting at? You're not just molding with what's coming into your females. You also have your males that are going to come into that, and the common denominator, a lot of times, possibly, it's going to be Aruba on the female side and Aruba again on the male side. And this is how I've structured it. And I've structured it that way because, granted, the male's not going to give the mitochondrial DNA. The female is, but I don't need to repeat that because she's already giving the mitochondrial DNA I want from Aruba. So once we bring that in, now we're just re-implementing genetic code from Aruba's side when the male goes in. So in essence, you have an outside male going into my female, and 50% of that is Aruba. Nice. And so I'll put here my female, and then eventually my male. So here you go. You got my female over here. She's got 50% my dog's blood, Aruba. 50% another dog, an outcross dog. When she has pups, this guy over here with his same 50% that she's got off of Aruba, it's going to go into that pup. I don't know about you guys, but last time I checked, 50% plus 50% is 100. Yes, now, I have no guarantee that the same 50% are going to go in, or that the 50% is needed to complete the other, the 100%, you know, that they're going to fit in this particular way or like this. I have no way of knowing that. Absolutely. But it doesn't hurt to repeat it in that manner. And that would be an uncle to niece breeding, which would be considered, say, a line breeding. That is the essence of how I've set things up. And the biology behind it is simply that those X's that the females have are going to outnumber that X that the male has, because that Y took the place of another X. See where I'm coming from? Also, I will say my experience, or what I've seen, is that a lot of times the male puts the head on the dogs, yet the body is on the female side for whatever reason. Doesn't always happen that way. Every now and then, if the male has a prevalent flaw, for example, I don't care if she's got mitochondrial DNA, unless she's like very well inbred, it's possible that the male's going to come in and push that flaw. It is possible. Again, everybody has different experiences. Like some people I see, they really talk down on East-West. And don't get me wrong, I don't like East-West. One of the first things I look at a dog is the front feet. If I see East-West, everything else has to be on point. I agree with that. But I also think that East-West is not the hardest thing to fix. It's not the hardest thing to fix. It's been my experience that you could pretty much clear East-West within, I don't want to say one generation, because then everybody's going to hold me to that, but I've seen it done in one generation. Let me just say that. So things that I do see that takes a lot longer for you to fix, stiff stifles. That's one of the reasons why, you know, once I know a dog has stiff stifles, I kind of start thinking twice. And it's more than anything, it's just time. Anything could be fixed. It's just going to take you more time to fix it. Underbite, that's another thing. Some people swear that underbites can be fixed right away. I don't even mess with that. Kink tails is something that I would be very adamant to never even breed to, because I've told you guys in the past, the spine, the eyes, the kidneys, they're all done in the mesoderm, right? And so you go ahead and breed a dog with a kink tail and none of the pups show a kink tail, you might have just traded that kink tail for some sort of eye issue or kidney issues in your dog. That's another reason why you don't breed that. Legacy Bully saying, how do you determine if inbreeding is okay? All right, so look, everybody has a different definition, a different parameter as to how far they want to go. In my opinion, if you have a dog in the 40s, as far as COI, those of you that don't know what COI is coefficient of inbreeding. It tells you how inbred your dog is. The way that they do that is they look at the DNA and they see how many pairs are lined up together the same. Some poly chains could be hundreds of thousands long. For you to have 100,000 combinations exactly the same, it's no coincidence there's got to be an inbred. And so they draw these percentages as to how many of these homozygous or identical pairs there are versus non-identical, and that's how they determine it. I kind of feel like I probably wouldn't inbreed anything above. I mean, again, each situation is different. But if I was looking at COI alone, I'd probably have to scratch my head if I want to do an inbreeding with a dog that has a COI that's higher than, say, a 25, okay? Because you get what I'm saying? Now, after you inbreed, that dog may be in the 40s. You don't want to inbreed to a dog that's already in the 40s. You see what I'm saying? He was already just inbred. To go ahead and inbreed that again, I kind of feel like you're asking for trouble.